A couple of months ago, I was asking you in the community tab to ask questions about crochet. And I have gone through those on a long live session, but now I have picked a few to have a more structured video about those. At times I like to film outside, and today I chose a location that's one of my favorites in a small village in the southwestern Finland where one of my daughters lives. There's both the sea and lakes in this village, and this is one of the small lakes with a path that goes alongside it. And it's a lovely place to walk a dog. I'm dog sitting at the moment, so I picked a few filming locations here. The first question is that which way do you turn crochet? This way or that way? And the person who asked this said that people don't often talk about that, even when you teach beginners. There's a very simple way to say it. You turn crochet just like you turn pages of a book. So it goes anti-clockwise. And the reason for that is that way the working yarn stays behind your work and doesn't come in the front where it can easily show in an ugly way. Now there are some exceptions to this, some stitches and techniques, but this is a basic thing that almost always works. The next question is something that can be a problem, especially when you haven't been crocheting for a long time, that you have a difficulty counting your stitches and a difficulty distinguishing where one stitch is. Each stitch, of course, is different. There are so many different stitch combinations especially. And what I think is a very good way is that until it becomes clear that you would always take time, especially when you start crocheting a new stitch, that you look at the stitch one at a time and even frog it, even undo it, so that you see what exactly the stitch looks like. And then you crochet another one. And then you see the difference between what it was when you didn't have that last stitch. So it takes a bit of time in the beginning, but it's worth doing it because counting stitches really is a skill that you need all the time. A couple of weeks ago, I had been asked to take a crochet evening to a local businesswomen's group. It was really interesting and a nice evening, and it helped me understand how it can take time to feel that crochet is natural to you. Now, here in Finland, everybody has been crocheting as a child. Crochet and knitting have always been taught at schools, but if you haven't crocheted for 20 years or 30 years or whatever, it's not easy to take it up again. So it was very useful to me to see that people who are almost beginners, what kind of things they look for and what kind of things they find difficult. One of the questions and problems that comes up all the time is that if you have a pattern that calls for a specific yarn, how am I going to find something to substitute that if I can't get that particular yarn? And that is such a common problem that some weeks ago I made a specific video about just that. And on that video I'm using Ravelry to find yarns that can be used to substitute. Because Ravelry is by far the largest yarn database. And many people are not aware that it can be used for other things than just looking for patterns. So check out this video when you have a problem about substituting yarns. Another very common problem is that you forget what crochet hook, what size hook you were using when you have set down your work and done something else and maybe use the hook for another project at the same time. Now there are many ways. Some people use all sorts of tags and writing things down and all that. But I think by far the easiest and most certain way is that you put the project and the yarn and the hook and possibly the pattern all on a table and take a photo with your phone and then keep the photos somewhere where you don't lose them. The next question is that what do you do if you tend to get shoulder pain or pain in your arms while you are crocheting? Now, I'm not a medical person, so I'm just giving my own opinion on this. And something that many people have found very useful is using these breastfeeding pillows or nursing pillows, these big things that go around it so that you can put it either way so that your elbows and your arms are always well supported, or doing the same with other pillows. And another thing is simply taking breaks often enough. That can help as well. Voices are carried so well across the lake there. There are some people on a boat over there. I can hear them but not see them. The next question is that somebody says that they are a beginner with granny squares, and that is it okay to mix different weights of yarns on the different rounds of a granny square? Now the quick answer is no, you can't do that, but there may be some situations where you can, if it's more for like an artistic thing. Otherwise I would not do it, because then some of the rounds would be bulging out and others would be cramped. But the only situation where I would do it, if it was for something where it's not going to be actually used, for example for yarn bombing projects or something like a wall art or something like that, then there are no rules. But if you're actually going to, if you're making a bag or a cardigan or whatever, then just use yarns that are almost the same weight. Then the last question is one that could easily be a whole video about it, but sort of basics about that. And the question is, how can I learn to crochet anything without a pattern? That's a skill that everybody can learn. There are so many crochet designers around the world, and all of them have started somewhere. There are two different ways of doing it. For myself, I have never used patterns, practically never. Only stitch tutorials and technical tutorials and instructions, but not actual full patterns. So I started as a child making my own patterns. Then there's the other way, is that you used to use patterns, that you have always been using patterns and then want to transfer from that. And both have advantages. If you are used to using patterns, that has helped you understand a lot of the structure of crochet items, and you have learned lots of different stitches and how things are formed. At the same time, this may not always be helpful, because you may have learned just to copy. You just follow the pattern word by word without thinking. So it depends a lot how much you have used those patterns, so that little by little you have learned how it goes without having to look at any patterns. While if you are new to crochet and you straight away start crocheting without using any patterns, you can in some ways learn faster and in other ways learn slower, because you don't have much help then. You have to work out things yourself that you could have got help with. But as you are doing that, that gives you a very sort of profound understanding of how stitches work. And that's something that I find very useful for myself. In crocheting without any aids and patterns, one of the most important things is that you understand gauge, that you understand how many stitches you need to have for building whatever you are doing. So apart from knowing basic crochet, then understanding gauge and using that to calculate things yourself is then the next step, I would say. And overall, there are different ways that pattern designers do. Some people write first. I could never do that because I'm not used to written patterns or any kind of patterns. So my way often is trial and error. I do write notes then, so that I don't have to start from scratch again, especially when I make a video about something. Just recently there, I was making something I don't normally do, this amigurumi bird. And that of course would have been easier for somebody who is an amigurumi designer, which I am not and not planning to be. So it took me probably too much trial and error to get the shape of the bird. Now, it was a commission that it had to look a certain way. But basically, as I said, anybody can learn, and you just start and see where you go from there. So these were all the questions, and I have managed to answer them all without falling into the water myself or dropping anything in there. It's always a pleasure to film in nice locations outside, even though it takes a bit more time, but I think it's worth it. Until next time.